Good morning. It's a good Rosh Chodesh. Today is Chaf Tes Tishrei. Tomorrow's Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan. Baruch Hashem, we're here to learn Perek Zion of Masechta Sheviis. We're almost done with the Masechta. Very exciting. Today's shiur is sponsored by Nishmas Aaron Nachman ben Simcha Cohen, Yushu Mordechai ben Shepsel, Bracha, Sarah Shmuel Leib, Binyamin Moshe ben Yosef. May the shows have an aliyah and unfortunately for other Sarbas Leah B'Sof Shar Chali Yisrael. Okay, Perek Zion. So, just to review a little bit of the laws that we have of Shemitah, right? About what you can do, what you can or cannot do with the Shemitah produce. We've learned so far that it can be eaten or consumed in a food-like manner, but it may not be wasted or used for business purposes. It must be left half-good for everyone to take, and it cannot be guarded by the owner of the field in which it grew. Like around Pesach time, and the biur is performed when each species of produce is no longer available in the field for wild animals to eat. At that point, a person who has any of the species in his house must make them hefker and put it outside for anyone to take. However, not everything has Shemitah saying that a Shemitah Kedusha is subject to biur. And this is where we're going to start today. Klal Gadol Amr B'Shvius. The Chachamim said a major rule about Shemitah. Kol shehu Michael Adam, Michael Behema, Umimen Hatzovim. Any produce that is food for people, or food for animals, or a species that's used for dyeing, special dyes, and does not last in the ground, meaning that it rots if left in the ground for a long time. Yesh lo Sheviis u'ledamo Sheviis. Then all those things have Kedusha Shemitah, and if it's sold, the money received for it has Shemitah sanctity as well. Yesh lo biur u'ledamo biur. If it is subject to the requirement unavailable for wild animals to eat, and if it's of biur. So we're going to go through each of the categories. The Eze, which type of produce are examples of these things? Ze ale haluf hashota. The first category, which we spoke about in the past, is the leaf of the wild loof. The leaf of the wild loof, which we said in the past was like an onion. It's so bitter that it grows wild. So that the loof is not edible until it's sweetened, and it's considered a food, and therefore has Kedusha Shemitah. But Ale had dandana, then a leaf of mint, take a mint leaf, ocean, accretion, endives and leeks that are wild, which are eaten when the garden varieties are not available. Regila and purslane, which is a type of herb with edible leaves, the nates, echalav, and the milky blossom. It's a plant with flowers that are as white as milk. Even though these are not frequently eaten, they're eaten close. They're eaten often enough to be considered food, so they have Shemitah Kedusha. The second and third categories are Michael Behema, Achuchim Behadardarim, plants that are used for animal food, that do not last in the ground include soft thorns and thistles. Some hard words over here. Species that are used for making dyes that do not last in the ground include aftergrowths of isatis and safflower. So isatis is like a source of a blue dye. Yesh lehem Sheviis, v'dameim Sheviis. All of these products have Shemitah Kedusha, and the money received for them has Shemitah Kedusha as well. Yesh lehem biur, v'dameim biur. They are subject to the requirement of biur, and the money received from them is subject to also to the requirement of biur. We treat the money and the product the same way. Mishnah Beis. V'ol klal amru, v'ol klal achar amru. The Chacham said another rule. Kol shehu meichel adam meichel behema sovim. Any produce that is food for people or food for animals or a species used for dyeing, miskaim ba'aretz and last in the ground. Yesh lo Sheviis the most Sheviis. It has Shemitah Kedusha, and the money received for it has Kedusha Shemitah as well. Ein lo biur, ein lo dama biur, however, is not subject to biur, and the money is also not subject to biur. Ezehu, and which type of produce are examples of these things? Iker haluf hashota. We're talking once again about the root of the wild loaf. Before we talk about the leaves. Now we're talking about the root. The root, the roots do survive in the ground, and therefore they do not require biur, whereas the leaves from the previous Mishnah do not last in the ground and are therefore subject to the laws of biur. The ikar hadundona and the root of the mint. Before we talk about the leaf of the mint, for the same reason. Our covenant and our covenant. This is like a type of grass that grows near the base of palm trees and curls itself around them. V'hachalbitzin and roots of the milky blossom. Again, before we were talking about the leaf. Right, now we're talking about the root. Buchria, and buchria, which is it's an herb whose root has a pleasant cinnamon-like smell to it. Sovim Hapua Sheviis. I'm sorry. The category of species used for dyeing that last in the ground include madder and dyer's weed. Yeshlam Sheviis, Sheviis. All of these products have Shemitah Kedusha, and the money received for them has Shemitah Kedusha as well. But biur, but they are not subject to the requirement of biur, and the money received for them is not subject to biur as well. May disagrees, and he says the Mayim aspiring out. The Mayim aspiring out Rosh Hashanah, that the money received for them must be consumed before Rosh Hashanah of the 8th year, meaning the end of Shemitah. He holds that the money spent must be disposed of before Rosh Hashanah, because if it was left around any longer, one might forget that it's Shemitah Kedusha and use it for business purposes. Amlo the Chamsetim Lahen and biur. These plants themselves are not subject to biur. How much more so for the money receive from them, it's not logical to treat the exchange money whose Shemitah Kedusha comes from the original produce more strictly than the produce itself. Therefore, since the Shemitah Kedusha, since the produce itself has no biur, then certainly, by Kal Vachomer, the money should not have to be destroyed either. Mishnah Gimel, Kilpei Rimon, the peels of a pomegranate, and its blossom, Kilpei Agozim, as well the husks of walnuts, which are all usable as dyes, the Hagalinin, and fruit pits that are eaten by people or animals, like the peach pit or like the cherry pit or the plum, whatever. Yesh have Sheviis, they have Shemitah, they have Kedusha Shemitah, or the may have Sheviis, and the money received for them also has Kedusha Shemitah. Hatzabat Sovela Asmo, a dyer may use Shemitah produce to dye fabrics for himself. Lo Yitzba B'Schar. You may not dye fabrics together for others for payment. She'ein Osin Schora B'Peres Sheviis, because we may not do business with Shemitah produce. Using the dye to make money is a business activity. Nor may we do business with firstborn animals that are blemished. Although with trumas, and we can't do business with truma either. Lo benevelus, and you can't do it with benevelus, which is a dead animal that was not slaughtered in a kosher way. Treifus and not with treifus, and lo b'shkasim and not with shkasim, like the sea creatures, and non kosher birds, the flying creatures, land-based vermin. There are a lot of things that fall under shkasim. Lo b'remasim, and not with remasim, which are tiny worms and insects that grow inside of fruit or rotting matter. You can't do business with them. Person may not pick vegetables of the field in order to sell them, the mocher b'shuk, and then sell them in the market because this has the appearance of a business activity. Rather, he may pick the vegetables, and his son may sell them instead of him. Since he's not selling them himself, he does not seem to be engaging in business. If he took Shemitah produce for the purpose of eating it himself and left some over, he's allowed to sell it. In this case, he may even sell it himself, but since he picked the produce in order to eat it, selling what remains does not resemble a business activity. Moving right on, Mr. Dalit. Lakach b'chor Mishnah B'no. Someone bought a blemished firstborn animal to slaughter it for his son's wedding feast, all the regal or for a festival, and then he did eat it. But to the machu, he's allowed to sell it. He didn't buy it in order to do business with it. Similarly, Sadeh Tameim, if trappers of wild animals, fowl, or fish happen to come across non-kosher species, mutarim they are allowed to sell them. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Af even someone who is not a professional trapper who chanced upon a non-kosher animal, he may take it and sell it, as long as it does not become his practice. The Chachamim answered anyone who's not a professional trapper to sell a non-kosher animal, even if he chanced upon it. Mishnah Hey, the shoots of the service tree and the carrot tree. I'm not really sure what a service tree is. Let's see notes on this. Let's see. No. Yes, they have Sheviis, they have Shemitah Kedusha, the mayhem Sheviis, and the money exchange for them has Shemitah sanctity. Yes, they have biur, they are subject to biur. The mayhem biur and the money exchange for them is also subject to biur. Lulave ha'ela ha'butna ha'atadin, the shoots of the terebinth, the pistachio tree, and the thorn bush. Yes, they have Sheviis, they have Shemitah Kedusha. With the man Sheviis and the money exchange also has Shemitah Kedusha. Ein lehem biur, they're not subject to biur. Well, the man biur and the money is also not subject to biur. Aval alen yesh biur. However, the leaves of all these trees are subject to biur. Mifnei shenoshim avihim, because they wither and fall off of the branches and become unfit to eat even by wild animals. Two more Mishnahs to go. Mishnah Vav. Mishnah Vav. Havered v'hakofer v'hakataf v'halotem. The rose, the clove, the sap of the balsam tree, and the stone pine. Yesh them Sheviis. They have Shemitah Kedusha, because they are sometimes used to flavor foods. With the mayhem Sheviis, and the money exchanged for them has also Shemitah Kedusha. Rabbi Shimon says, "Ein lakatev Sheviis." The balsam does not have Shemitah Kedusha, next to Ein peri, because it is not a fruit, but it's part of the tree from which it came. And finally, the Mishnah Zayim, Verid Chadash Shekivshu B'Shemen Yashin. If a new Shemitah rose was soaked in old 6-year oil, and the rose gave flavor to the oil, you lock it as a verid, or may pick out the rose from the oil, because the rose is biur before the rose's biur deadline, and the 6-year old and the 6-year oil will remain permitted. The yasham b'chadash chayav biur, but if an old, the 7th-year rose that had passed its biur deadline was soaked in new 8th-year oil and gave flavor to it, then the oil becomes subject to the laws of biur and must therefore be destroyed. The oil absorbed the flavor from the rose when the rose was already prohibited. Where the new 7th-year carobs were soaked in old 6-year wine until past the carobs deadline. The Yeshanim B'Chadash, or old 7-year carobs already past the biur deadline, were soaked in new 8th-year wine. Chayavim biur, the wine is subject to biur and must be destroyed. In each of these cases, it absorbed flavor after the carobs were already usher. Here's a general rule: Zaklal, kol shehu benosin tam, whatever has been given flavor by someone that's already subject to biur, chayil biur is subject to biur. Min b'she'en amino, if the mixture of a kind is if a kind in a different kind, min amino is one kind to another kind. Min b'she'eno umin b'mino kol shehu. But 1 second. So min b'she'eno mino, the permitted produce does not become forbidden unless it absorbs flavor from the forbidden produce. If it does not absorb the flavor, then it's mutter. Umin b'mino kosher, but in a mixture of one kind with its own kind, then the permitted item becomes forbidden, even if it contains the smallest amount of the permitted item and does not absorb any of its flavor. And finally, Sheviis oseres kosher b'mina. Shemitah produce that has passed its biur deadline makes produce out of its own kind forbidden, even if there is just the smallest amount of it in the mixture. V'shelo b'mina another same time. But when Shemitah produce that has passed its biur deadline is mixed with produce of a different kind, it makes the other produce forbidden only if it imparts flavor to it. That is all for today. Tomorrow we'll continue with Perek of Sheviis. A good day and a good Erev Chodesh.